This is John Jackson Miller, and you're listening to the Star Wars Canon Podcast. May the Force be with you.
There are stories about what happened.
It's true. All of it.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of the Star Wars Canon Podcast, episode 72. I am your host, Brian Miller, and I'm so glad you decided to join us to talk about our favorite thing in the world yet again, Star Wars. I am joined, hopefully, with my co-host from across the pond. I think we're having a little bit of technical difficulties right now, but he is across the pond. He's ready to talk some Star Wars. My brother, Usef, how are you doing, brother?
I'm good. Apart from these technical difficulties, I'm across a couple of ponds. So it's the big one. It's the big one is the Atlantic, and then there's another smaller pond over there, the Mediterranean, which I'm all the way at the end of. So yeah, it's pretty cool.
Fair enough.
I'd actually, if I dug directly into the ground, what would be the other side of the Earth? I have never asked this question
From
of
Egypt?
myself.
That's a good question.
Yeah, that's a good question.
I know where it is for us. I think for me, it's like the middle of the Indian Ocean somewhere.
Oh,
Is what
okay.
I'm not
it's
sure
not it's not in your house. So it's not in your state.
Yeah, no, I
It's
wish
not for me.
straight down. Yeah. But yeah, I thought, because we were joking beforehand, Usuf tried a VPN, and he was like, tell everybody I'm in Jersey. I'm trying to VPN from Jersey tonight. And I was excited.
It worked for a brief moment, for a brief
did.
5-10 minutes. It worked.
And we've been talking already for like a half hour, and we didn't have any problems at all with any of it. No lag, nothing like that, until we started talking about, all right, let's get the episode going. And then it just all came at once. Yeah. So if Usef ends up dropping from the call, we'll see if we can get him back in the middle of it. If not, Usef has told me to go on without him. Don't be a hero, and to leave him behind. Yeah. So I don't like leaving you behind.
This is
what you want us to do. That's what we'll do.
We already tried recording this a couple of weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. So we need to get this out. We need to get back on the mics. We need to get back out here.
We do. And when we recorded a couple of weeks ago, when we tried to get this episode out the first time, we talked about, like I said, a couple of different topics, but then we didn't have AHSOKA yet. It was the weekend. I think we were trying to do it the weekend before AHSOKA was coming out. And so now that was 4 episodes of AHSOKA ago. So I figured tonight, since this is kind of our big comeback episode, we're just going to sit here, talk some AHSOKA. I know you've seen all 4 episodes. I've seen all 4 episodes. My brain is still running out of my ears from the finale this past week. So I figured we would just talk about some AHSOKA. We got a mailbag question, and we're going to do the villain bracket. And since we kind of recorded last week already, I figured we'd just keep the same matchup that we randomly picked in that episode, and that's what we'll run with. So before we get going too awful hard, though, onto the AHSOKA stuff, because that's what everybody's wanting to talk about right now, including me. I'm just, you guys you'll see the passion and the excitement coming through here in a little bit. Like I was annoying my wife. That's all I'm going to say. I was annoying her with my excitement after that. I had to step outside and breathe. So before we get into all the AHSOKA excitement, I just wanted to tell everybody real quick. Yours truly is now on Star Wars Newsnet Live every week on Thursday at 10 p.m. Central. So you guys can find me there. Usually I'm with Paul and Tyler, and it's kind of a revolving set of hosts. I think I'm the most consistent one. I think I'm the one that's there in every episode. So go check that out. Come hang out with us in the live chat. The last several weeks we've been talking about AHSOKA and reviewing episodes and whatnot. So definitely come check that out. I think we lost Usef. I'm not entirely sure. We'll see if he comes back. Hopefully he comes back. But go check out Star Wars Newsnet's Facebook page. Oh, he's back. Let me get him back here real quick. There we go. There he is. Yeah, it's like you guys can see, we're not just making this up. We're having some issues tonight. I don't know what it is. So
yeah, it's back and forth. But this time there was no mic interruption. So please keep going.
Oh no, you're good. So definitely head over there, check out the Star Wars Newsnet YouTube channel, and come hang out with us on Newsnet Live every Thursday night. Next Thursday night, we're going to be talking about this next upcoming episode of Ahsoka, and so very excited about it. We have a lot of fun, a lot of banter back and forth, a lot of varying opinions. And there would have been some fights broken out already had we not been states away with a camera between us, So there's been some,
cool.
points of contention in there a couple times between. I'll say who it is too. It's me and Paul. Me and Paul vary on a lot of stuff with our opinions. He swears by Rey Skywalker, and I don't. You guys know how I feel about it. So it's been a big point of contention. A lot of fun to come watch us duke it out. So definitely come hang out with us and kind of steer the conversation in the live chat. So, and one more thing real quick, we've started over the Facebook page for the Star Wars Canon Podcast, since we're kind of doing a bit of a rebranding and getting everything out a little bit more actively on social media and stuff. So go check out facebook.com/Star Wars Canon Podcast. That is where you can find us now. Like the page, give us a follow, and we'll start posting the podcast there every week. We'll start posting. I thought about doing bios, not really bios, kind of the excerpts from canon novels and releasing them, letting people, who are new to canon kind of know what every novel's about and everything like that. Because the ranking videos just get to be too much at this point. And 200 novels in, and it's like, oh gosh, and every year you go over all of them again. So go check it out. Give us a like and a follow. We'd sure appreciate it. So without further ado, Usef, all that's out of the way. Let's talk about some Ahsoka. We've got 4 episodes to talk about. Before we really get into, I guess, a phrase that everybody says I've coined, the meat and potatoes of the series, what were your initial thoughts? What were you most excited to see in this series? And is it living up to your expectations?
Yeah, so this is exactly where we should start. Initially, if you recall, when we were talking about this, whether it was months ago, whether it was just privately, whether it was on the podcast, I was super excited. The most important aspect I wanted to see was more lightsaber action, because Ahsoka is a vividly lightsaber action kind of character in the animated shows, in Clone Wars and in Rebels. And I'm not disappointed, not in the slightest. It's a healthy amount that we're seeing, not too much, not too little. And so that was the first thing, obviously, alongside the story. Like, I'm not just trying to see some lightsaber action. I could just watch, some sort of fan-made lightsaber action, or just rewatch some of the old movies and stuff. But honestly, so the show as well, what I really wanted to see was characters from Rebels. The more I watched Rebels, the more I loved the characters. Here's the thing about Rebels that people don't get. If you haven't watched Rebels, you can still really appreciate Ahsoka. But the fact that I've now seen Rebels, and the way I watched Rebels as well, so that it led into Ahsoka directly, I know that I am 15, 20 times minimum more invested in Ahsoka than I would have been. I'm talking about myself. I'm not talking about that you would be, wherever you are, 20 times more invested into the show. But I am genuinely that much more sort of incentivized to, or encouraged, or anxious to see the rest of this. The characters seem so real. Their stories have come alive, and that's really what I wanted. And I wasn't really saying that as an expectation. Like, I expect to see these characters be amazing. That wasn't really an expectation for me personally. Everybody else was miles ahead of me looking at this. Yeah, we're going to see all these characters. We're going to see this. As a matter of fact, Ezra is going to be a whole topic on the show. Where are we going to see him? Is he not? Because we know he's being casted. We know this. We know that. What about Thrawn? When are we going to see him? What about this? Honestly, I wasn't worried about that aspect. I was more worried about Ahsoka's struggle, and I may not have voiced this enough, but I was okay. So what is it? What is she looking for? What's the idea? What's the concept? And there's so many, man. There's so many to think about. There's we'll get into this later, I suppose, with the talking, especially about the last episode, and hopefully predictions for the next episode. But her relationship with everything, with the Force, with Luke, with Hera, with Sabine, with everyone, that's all so important. With Anakin, everything's so important. And so I'm just still excited to keep watching. And I haven't. People are saying this is the best Star Wars they've seen yet. Period. Whether some people are saying it's the best Star Wars they've seen since Disney took over. Some people are saying it's the best Star Wars they've seen ever. For me, It's still not the best Star Wars I've seen ever, and it's still not the best Star Wars I've seen since Disney took over Lucasfilm. I'm reserving judgment. It's up until now, it's not, but I will. If it does at any point switch, I'll be first to jump to the bandwagon and say, hey, by the way, like this is so like it's jumped a level now, which it might do in the next episode, but we'll see. And also, I think everybody, as usual, I always do this, and I know I'm kind of cautious, maybe a little bit too cautious at times. Wait until all the episodes come out first. Just make sure that you see it, because it's meant to. This is how Filoni works. This is how these writers work now. It's not the same as episodes 7, 8, 9, where there's a different director for each part, writer and director for each part. No, these guys, they don't do anything by accident. They are consistent, if nothing else. Especially Dave Filoni, and this is his baby right from the start. This is a character he created. This is a character he's given the backstory of. He's been mostly or wholly in charge of her development with the characters, whether it was in Clone Wars or in Rebels. So this is how you're supposed to see it, the whole picture. So I can't really judge it unless I see the whole picture. But so far, so amazingly freaking good. Really excited.
I second almost everything you just said. Almost everything you said. I will go as far as to say this isn't the best Star Wars that they've done since Disney's had it, but I think this, and we'll talk about each episode individually, but I think this last episode we got, episode 4, I think, in my opinion, that is the best episode of Star Wars television we've gotten. I don't think it's the best Star Wars they've done, but I think it's the best episode of Star Wars television. And I put that up against the Mandalorian episode, The Jedi, when Ahsoka was first introduced. I put it up against, that Mando 2.5 episode that was in the middle of Book of Boba Fett, that, it was Luke and, training Grogu, and Ahsoka was there. And I put it up against that, which that was my favorite up until this point. I put it up against Luke Skywalker taking down Dark Troopers. And to me, this episode was great. It had so much world building in it and so much lore that got introduced in just 40 minutes. But not just talking about this episode, so far the entire series, every episode has been just, I think, knocked it out of the park. The third episode was 30 minutes. It was the shortest one so far. I think that, I get why it was 30 minutes. I get it. You cut the fat off. That's what you end up getting. I get it. But so far, I think this series is just knocking it out of the park. And you're right. It's all because of Dave Filoni. I'm about to put a sign up in the background somewhere here that says, "In Filoni we trust," and just keep it, because I completely agree that everything he touches turns to gold. Everything, even the stuff he doesn't touch, he can later enhance with his material. Look at the prequels, right? He didn't work on the prequels. Prequels were not universally loved originally. He did Clone Wars, and granted, George Lucas was involved in Clone Wars, but he did Clone Wars, and it really, at least for me personally, it gave me a deeper appreciation for the prequels after seeing that massive story with Anakin and Obi-Wan and Ahsoka. And because when you hear in A New Hope where Obi-Wan says, he was the best star pilot in the galaxy and a good friend, you see the best star pilot in the galaxy. You see that in the movies, and you see glimpses of him, as a good friend. But when you watch Clone Wars, you really see that friendship. You see they already know what each other's
levels and their experiences, and
yes. And so everything that he touches turns to gold, and everything that he touches that turns to gold turns other stuff to gold, in my opinion. So I am already just stupidly drooling for whatever else he's going to end up giving us in this series. But what I'm most excited about is that I'm already loving this series so much, and it's the precursor basically to the movie he's going to be doing in 3, 4, whatever years when he does that, which I think everybody has heard me say that's my most anticipated Star Wars project ever, is the Dave Filoni movie. And it's just because of the time, place it happens, the potential it has to bring the fandom back together, which we can talk about again later. But I'm so ridiculously excited for that movie. And then to see this and to know that the same guy that's doing this is going to be doing that, and it's all the same, same trajectory, same storyline. We very well, I know the fandom is split, I know Star Wars has been very hit and miss for a lot of people, but I think we may be coming up on an era where I think we could be coming up on the golden age of Star Wars. If they give Filoni more and more to do, I think we could be finding a golden age of Star Wars. So and here I am, I'm basically just worshiping Dave Filoni. But anyway, let's talk about the first episode. Then that first episode that reintroduced us to Ahsoka, it introduced us to reintroduced us to Morgan Elsbeth. We met Baylan and Shin for the first time. Met a live action Satine for the first time. Sabine, sorry, not Satine, Sabine. I wish.
Exactly.
Anyway, sorry, Sabine. I really enjoyed that episode a lot, and they released the first 2 episodes.
It was a great intro. It was a great intro.
It was, and when they did that kind of opening crawl thing with the red letters, and I was like,
amazing.
This
Loved
awesome.
it.
This is cool, and I really enjoyed it. And that whole opening sequence, I want to talk about it first. The whole opening sequence of the first episode, where you see their shuttle come overhead, coming to the Mon Cala cruiser, and them landing, and the captain's just like, they're Jedi? What? No, I call BS. I'm going to go meet him in person. That whole intro of them breaking Morgan Elsbeth out was, I think, a great kickoff for the series, especially with them saying,
Absolutely.
especially with her like saying, the Jedi, Ahsoka Tano. Boom, Ahsoka title screen, right? I thought it was a really cool little kick into it. It was a great introduction to Baylan and Shin, who are quickly becoming 2 of my favorite characters in Star Wars. Quickly. They're not there yet, but they're quickly getting there. And to see their interactions, and they're so mysterious and enigmatic. You know what I mean? So what did you think of this intro? I mean, other than basically saying that the New Republic sucks at prisoner transfer, what did you like so much about this intro that just made it stand out for you?
Baylan and Shin. So I know I tend to focus a lot on the on the enemies, on the dark side, on that sort of thing. But because it's so important to me to understand the whole point of the story and sort of like where it's going, the actual direction, and that was okay. It's giving me a target straight away, right? But also at the same time, they are exactly as you said. You took the words, right out of where I was thinking of them as well. Like just the not just the mystery, but the enhanced movement of them. They're so fluid. They're so good. They're so strong. I mean, Shin is doing so. Here, one of the villains, which is really she should have been live action. We should have seen her more. We should still see more of her. Hopefully, is Asajj Ventress. She's so poised. Her story's so written. Yeah. She's got such a thing. Yeah. So Shin is giving us that itch, or is giving me that itch. Do you know what I mean? Like that itch of like, she's also female. She's got the lightsaber down. She's cool. She's mysterious. She's intense. She's, you know what I mean? She's really interesting. Baylan, he's so cool, especially across the other episodes. But I mean, so that as an intro, so awesome. I loved the crawl. Just loved seeing a crawl in the first place, and having it just be like, explaining really briefly the red letters, as you said. So the rest of the episode, though, so it was so brief, but it was such a cool intro. The rest of the episode nicely unfolded. Nicely. So Sabine was like super cool on her bike with her hair and everything, and she's being a troublemaker. She's sort of non-conforming. Yeah, and then and then this bit about Sabine later on. Well, not later on, excuse me, as in immediately after this, introducing us to Sabine. So now it's stable, right? So now the New Republic is stable. She's not constantly on a base somewhere. She's not training. She's not resting in between missions. She's not doing this. So what is she doing? She's rebelling. That's what she does. Yeah. She's a rebel. That's what I think.
Rebel, always a rebel. Yep.
Once a rebel, always a rebel in every aspect of her life, and yet she's still a very valuable and important member of this sort of core. For the planet, for the government, for the authority. Excuse me, for everything. Which is so cool as well to see her sort of in this light where, so she's not satisfied because she wants more. This is just boring. I can't just be here and do nothing. And then now she's getting the purpose. She gets, that all kicks off that first episode. And that's really exciting, I think. What do you think about Sabine?
I completely agree with you. The stuff with Shin, though, like like, because I said it at the top of the episode, the Balin and Shin are quickly becoming my two of my favorite characters in Star Wars. Shin is, and you compared her to Asajj Ventress, which is a great comparison. I didn't even think about Asajj. That's a great comparison. She's the way I describe her is she's very animalistic. She's very vicious, but she's on a leash that Balin is holding, and
absolutely.
he's not let her off the leash yet. And I think, and she's very tuned in to what Balin is doing. Whenever he's talking, she is locked eyes, watching and learning and analyzing everything that he's saying, everything he's doing, and everything like. And so I think they're really cool. Balin, he has a code of honor about him, and he's very, King Arthur, Knights of the Round Table, esque. With the shoulder pads, with the way he holds his lightsaber, like so.
Exactly.
For example, he holds his lightsaber like this, with his hands all the way like a broadsword. When you see these pictures of him holding, it's like he's holding a broadsword. And and we can talk about episode 4 here in a little bit, but like his fight with Ahsoka, he was bringing it. He was bringing those heavy swings, those heavy attacks. He was just a beast, and he was so imposing and huge. But even when he's just walking down the hallway, right? He's got a presence about him. I can't wait to know more about him. I'm very intrigued by them, especially with the orange lightsabers. They're not, I don't think they are who we think they are, especially considering, at the end of the first episode, or maybe it was the second episode, when she's asking, what happens when we find Thrawn? And he says, for some, war. For others, blah, blah, blah. And she's like, what about for us? And he says, power. He's not interested in, the galactic consequences that this is going to have. I don't think he's more interested in that personal, how is this going to affect me and you kind of thing, and so I'm still kind of foggy on what their motivations are. I think everybody is, obviously, but I'm still foggy on it. But I trust Filoni enough that when it comes around and the explanation finally drops, that it's going to make total sense. And we're going to go, oh,
No, the build up to their characters thus far is fantastic.
Absolutely. And the pacing for their development has been great. Even sprinkled throughout.
It's so anticipating. I'm so anticipating.
So good. Excuse me. Yeah, it's been fascinating to watch. That whole first episode I thought was a great reintroduction with Ahsoka and Sabine. We still don't know exactly what happened between the two, why necessarily Ahsoka walked away. But what do you think of Natasha playing Sabine? You think she's a good live action Sabine? I think she's nailing it. I think she's absolutely doing a great job with it. What are your thoughts on Sabine?
I think she's really good, especially the physicality of Sabine. Sabine is so nimble. Sabine is such a flexible character. It's hard to translate this stuff from animated to live action. If you told an animator, by the way, this is going to be a live action movie later, it completely changes how he thinks, or potentially slightly change depending on the animation style, but it changes. It impacts what he's doing. Nobody told these animators back in the day when they were making Rebels, these characters are going to come back. Also, in fact, when they were making Clone Wars, because Rebels is really close as an animating style to Clone Wars, like 90% the same, or maybe 80%, I suppose. But I mean, so nobody told these guys that this might be a movie one day, or a show, or a series, or whatever. So for them to now have to at least take these elements and bring them into live action is not an easy sell. Not in any sense. Because some stuff, actually, so here's something I'll bring up, since I know we're jumping a little bit past sort of talking episode by episode, but so Ahsoka, while we're on this topic, so Sabine seems spot on. Her flexibility, her agility, her strength as well. She's still got a lot of strength about her, but sort of a little bit enough. She's strong enough to make a difference, but she's also not that strong because she's getting overpowered by a specific set of enemies, which makes sense. Because here it makes sense as well. But Ahsoka's physicality, she's very, very flamboyant and what's the word? acrobatic as well in Rebels. In Ahsoka series, she's not that acrobatic because, for example, in that fight you mentioned, with Baylan, there was this bit when she could have in a show, in Rebels or Clone Wars, she definitely would have backflipped off of the rock when she pushed into it, but she used it just to step off back into Baylan rather than backflip over. You know what I mean? Like, I could definitely just see that. And she was ultra fast and everything. I know, obviously, because she's a Jedi and that's how she's fighting. And then in a live action show, you're not going to be super fast at that speed. And also because technically she being, did I just call Ahsoka a Jedi? Interesting. Anyway, sorry. But yes, so her fighting,
He's a citizen,
Baylan, who was also a Force user, they got them fighting together, Ahsoka and Baylan, they sort of can match each other in a certain way for speed and for power and for lightsaber and for force wielding. So that's I understand the mantra there. For she doesn't have to be that acrobatic. That's fine. But anyway, sorry. So I digress a little bit. The Sabine Hera Syndulla. So moving a little bit further, just from Sabine. Sabine as an actress, fantastic. Hera Syndulla. I think we talked about this briefly. She's 50-50. For me, she's a little bit more than 50-50. I really like her. I really like her tone. I really like her wisdom. I really like her character because her character shows a lot through her speech, a lot. And when we saw her later on through the episodes as well, forcing somebody's hands, forcing everybody else to come join her, being sort of argumentative with senators and things like that. That's when her character shines through. But so just the tone of her voice and the way she speaks and the way her presence is on screen, it's not exactly like in Rebels, but I'm not upset in any way, shape, or form. I'm really, really happy. I mean, obviously Chopper steals the show, but anyway, we'll get to
you get me started on Chopper, dude. You get me started on Chopper. I was smiling like an idiot that entire that scene, where he's on the ship and he puts his hands on his hips with the thing, and it was just pure Chopper. He translated so well to live action. I was just grinning like an idiot. My face hurt because I was smiling so much watching it. And they even did the head spin thing to throw the tracking device. It was perfect. It was absolutely perfect. I wasn't sure how Chopper was going to translate the live action, especially with like the head wobble and everything, but it's perfect. They did Chopper cleanly in this series, and I'm excited to see more. I want to see the sadistic side of him again.
Super.
I want to see him double that body count. I want to see him double that 50,000 soldier body count that he's got right now. Because I've said it before, Chopper's the droid that if you're hanging off a cliff and he comes rolling up and looks down at you, you don't know if he's going to help you up or knock you off. You have no idea. And so I love that about him. And talking about droids also, Professor Huyang is awesome in this series. Every episode that we go through this series, Huyang just gets more and more delightful. Even in like the last episode where we had the Rock'em Sock'em Robot scene with him and the HK droid, that was really cool. And I like how Huyang, he's like all wobbly and like spindly when he's walking. And then when it goes into fight mode, he's like General Grievous popping out all these arms and punching. And when he's done fighting, he just goes back to wobbling again, like Yoda with the walking stick, right? Even when he's ready to go to town, he can go to town, but when he's done, back to the walking stick. I thought that was really cool. But Huyang, I asked Kirsty while we were watching it, I was like, why is it that every single time, and I know Huyang's not a new droid, so don't yell at me, everybody, I know, but why is it every time we get like a new droid in one of these series, they're just the best droid ever? Well, there's been a couple of exceptions, but every droid, you're just like, oh, that's awesome. That's a cool droid. Think about B2 Emo in Andor. He was really cool. Say what you will about BB-8 and was it Dio from Rise of Skywalker? I think it was Dio. Say what you will about them and L337. Don't get me started on her, but it seems like K2SO was awesome. Huyang's awesome. B2 Emo was awesome. Like there's just, they're getting the droids down. The personalities in the droids, they're really, really cool. And so I'm every aspect of this, man, every character of it, like you said with Hera, I think the further the show has gone now, because remember last time we talked about this, all we had to go based off was the trailers. That's all we had to at the time. Now we've got 4 episodes, and I think the I think the first 2 episodes, it was a little, like you said, 50-50. But as we've gone on, I think maybe it's because she's growing on me as Hera more so. There's been some moments, like what you said when she was arguing with the senators, where I was like, that's Hera Syndulla. That's her. And, when she sees Jason, which that was an awesome part too, seeing Jason Syndulla. But I think she's grown on us the same way Ahsoka grew on me originally. Because remember, I didn't like Rosario Dawson as Ahsoka in Mando on the first go. But she's grown on me, and the more I've seen of her, the more I'm like, okay, yeah, she's Ahsoka. She's embodying this character now. I think the same thing is going on with Mary Winstead as Hera, and Sabine had me sold from the get-go. As soon as I saw her on the speeder bike, doing the Top Gun with the E-wing flying next to her, I was sold. That's Sabine. Absolutely. The cadence in her dialogue was there. The look was there. Everything. It was there. And the moment she came on, I was like, yeah, that's her. That's absolutely her. My wife is just enthralled with the Loth cat that Sabine had on Lothal. Because Kirsty, I don't know if you guys know this about Kirsty. She's a crazy cat lady. And so is my foster daughter. They're crazy cat people. And, my foster daughter is talking about wanting to watch Ahsoka just for the Loth cat. But that cat was just, as soon as I remember watching the first episode, and that thing lifted its head up and just like looked at her, and all I heard from next to me in the next chair was, oh, she just like melted when she saw it. And then every time we saw it more and more, it was like, well, this is cool, because it was a practical effect, right? It was really, really cool how they did it. Because one of her favorite moments in Rebels was when Kanan is trying to teach Ezra to calm animals with the Force, right? To connect with animals. And it's this Loth cat, and it's growling at Ezra, and hissing and snarling. And then Kanan does it, and Ezra looks down, and the cat's just sitting there, and just looks up, and just and is just smiling. And that's one of her favorite parts too. And so to see that translated to live action was really cool. And I know we already saw a live action Loth cat once in the Obi-Wan Kenobi series, but to see one, more exposure to one like this, to actually see the mannerisms, it was really cool the way they did it. But to see Sabine in the same communication tower that Ezra lived in, and to see like Ezra's helmet, that yellow-orange helmet, that scout helmet that he had, you see it sitting there, and and some of his belongings, and obviously his lightsaber. And I think, talking about the lightsaber real quick, there was a line said, I think, was it the second or third episode? I think it was the third episode. It was the third episode, after Sabine gets injured, which still doesn't make any sense to me. How when Sabine got injured and she's laying in this hospital wing, Hu Yang tells her, and I see you still have your lightsaber, and she's like, that's Ezra's lightsaber. And he's like, well, you've made modifications to it, henceforth it's your lightsaber. So I think they planted that in there for a reason. Nobody cares about a new emitter on the lightsaber. I think the reason they put it in there was because of the stink everybody did over the Luke Skywalker saber, and everybody said it was Rey's lightsaber then. Like, no, it's Luke's, it's Anakin's, whatever. I think that's why they put it in there. Rey modified it, so now it's Rey's lightsaber. That's the only reason they threw that.
That's a good catch. Yeah.
That was the only reason they threw it in there. I know it is.
And then think about it that way.
And now that Dave Filoni's kind of put it out, I'm like, all right, fine. It's like Dave Filoni could tell me that, he could make something up about Star Wars. I'm like, all right, yeah, that makes no sense compared to anything else, but I believe you. So I'm willing to accept it. If it comes from Filoni, it's good enough for me. So this idea that she's force sensitive, that Sabine is force sensitive. What do you think about this? Do you think she's actually force sensitive? Do you think she's going to be basically like a Chirrut from Rogue One? What are you thinking on Sabine?
I think that if I had to predict something for the show, it would be that Sabine would show force sensitivity later on, one way or another. I think that it's a very important link, because something which is kind of, we love Star Wars a lot, and one of the reasons, that the most if I had to choose one specific singular most important reason that I love Star Wars, it's not just that, it's the Force, which is the whole, this is what makes Star Wars extremely unique. The problem with that is that it actually disengages a lot, because a beautiful thing about superheroes or fantasy or sci-fi or whatever it is that the characters are approachable, that you can picture yourself being, that these are ordinary guys. One of the big things between you and me once, which, well, I mean, it wasn't a big thing, it was just something that I criticized Luke a lot because of the events of episode 7, 8, 9, whereas you were like, no, this is, it's natural, it's logical. I'm like, no, it's not logical, we should have done this. Whereas actually for you, on the contrary, this makes him more human. So that's something it's the same logic, right? It makes you more human. The Force, the way the Force is given in this kind of show, excuse me, in Star Wars universe, excuse me, not in this show, in this kind of world, in this kind of universe, is kind of like Muggles and wizards in Harry Potter. You either have it or you don't. The Force, right? If you're Force sensitive, you're either Force sensitive or you're not. I think they're fixing this. Well, not fixing. Excuse me. Fixing implies there's something wrong with this. I don't mean that. I think they're sort of changing this a little bit, because Ahsoka comes out clearly and full on to camera says everybody has the Force in them, which is something that has been in Star Wars, right? Forever. Yes. Of course it is. Everybody has the Force in them. You know, you don't know don't have the Force. On the contrary, you have the Force in you. And then there's this whole explanation between her and Huyang, who is amazing, of course. And there's this whole dialogue about Force sensitivity, about you can train. Yeah, well, you're not going to be the same as others. Okay, sure, of course. There's some talent to it, and George Lucas himself has said there's even some biology to it, that you need the midichlorian cloud. You need to get those blood tests, son. But then this is the thing. They're trying to make it more approachable, I think. Yeah. I think that's the whole point here. I'm not upset by it. On the contrary, it sounds endearing. It sounds probable. It sounds better. I think it is potentially something in the right direction. And I think if Sabine gets something in terms in the way of Force sensitivity, that would be amazing. If we saw her actually controlling something, pushing something, doing something, because Shin just sort of taking the wind out of her completely with one sentence saying, you have no power. Sabine just got floored. Awesome scene, awesome fight. But yes, this completely floored her. Other than she was already feeling overwhelmed fighting Shin, especially because Shin beat her the first time and injured her. The thing about the injury, I'm not that upset with it because sure, it was in the side, it wasn't straight in the middle of the body, so it didn't hit any vital organs, I suppose. But I mean, honestly speaking, I know it's annoying that, I can't believe Qui-Gon effing Jinn doesn't survive this.
Every series so far that they've come out with.
Every series has done it. Exactly. It happened in Obi-Wan Kenobi. It happened here. It happened. And seriously, the thing is that, if we had to watch it now, we wouldn't want something like that to stop the character necessarily with all this universe, galactic medicine and we've seen cybernetics in Mandalorian turn someone into basically you mod your car, you mod your laptop, you mod your bike, you mod yourself. What's to stop you from modding? There's androids, there's robots, there's droids, there's everything. Why not add something to yourself? If Anakin had a robotic hand in the prequels, then why doesn't somebody else mod themselves? How could General Grievous, who people who you don't know the story of necessarily, actually his story isn't even perfectly explained in Clone Wars. It is explained a little bit. Yeah. But when you read about it more in the comics, holy crap, he was fully biological, and technically he still has some biology when Obi-Wan Kenobi in Revenge of the Sith opens up his chest and strikes him in there. You don't see organs, you don't see blood, but technically what's in there is actually the core of a human being. So anyway, if you actually were to see the Star Wars today, you would expect that something like this, a lightsaber, which actually seals the wound as it does it. So technically there's no more, you're not going to bleed out, right? Because it seals the wound entirely because of the way the laser cuts the wound or cuts the flesh. But anyway, so with all that in mind, I do hope that Sabine, I know that she's in a dark place right now. And this is so interesting as well, that she semi-willingly goes with Balin to see what's up, because she's so locked into finding Ezra, which is fair enough, if I'm honest. she does feel like he's her only or one of her remaining family members and the person that she connected with most in her life. So yeah, and I do think that she thinks of him as a sibling rather than as a love interest. That's something else that I was talking about with my wife, and she's like, "Yeah, but I never thought that Sabine would have had a crush on Ezra or something." I was like, "Oh, actually, I didn't think about that." But that's not necessarily. She might just love him as a brother. Like she has such a connection with him, and they've been through a lot together and everything. She's like, "Well, usually you wouldn't put that much effort into a character unless you love them in the show, in the TV show." I was like,
Right.
"Okay, that's interesting perspective from somebody actually just trying to read into what a writer's trying to do in front of you in a show." But I don't. I'm not necessarily biting that it's sort of a love interest. What do you think? What do you think about this?
No, I think it's a brother sister thing. Like, I mean, because
Yeah,
when she's watching the hologram of the recording of Ezra, which by the way, Ezra, they cast him perfectly. Sounds like Ezra.
so cool.
So even when he puts his hand up and like rubs the back of his head while he's talking,
Yeah, that's
Ezra
it.
from
Yeah,
Rebels,
yeah,
like
yeah.
it was so
Ezra.
great. And so I think it's just a brother and sister thing. But he says in that recording, we've been through a lot. I've thought of you as a sister. He says it right in the recording,
Yep.
and so I think that's all it is. I don't think it's a romantic thing by any means.
No.
Now remember the first time Ezra ever saw Sabine, he was like,
Whoa.
like he was,
Yeah, I remember.
yeah.
That.
So, but I think it's gonna end up being a brother or sister thing. So, I don't think there's much to
Cool.
to it, to be honest.
What do you think about Sabine being force sensitive?
So Kanan in Rebels, when he's trying to teach her, when she gets the Darksaber, right? When Sabine has the Darksaber in Rebels, he goes through this training regiment with her, and Ezra's helping him, and what was that, season 2? I believe that was season 2. Or no, was it? He was blind
Season
at that point, so
3.
it had to be season 3. Yeah, it had to be season 3. And so he, Hera's talking to him on the comlink, and she's asking, how's she doing? And she's got a block or something, and she's just not as into it as Ezra is. And Hera's like, it was because she doesn't have the Force, and he's like, no, the Force flows through all living things. Kanan said it then, and so it's just, he said she had some kind of mental block, and we know what was going on with her then. It was the weapons on Mandalore that she helped create and everything like that, and everything with her family and whatnot. So she had that mental block. If you think back to what the original Star Wars movie was in 1977, not what it is now, but what it was in 1977 when it was released, George Lucas never thought he was going to get to make the rest of the movies. He thought he was going to get to make this one movie, cut dry, and that was it. That's why that movie had a middle, beginning, and end, and it could have stood alone, never made a sequel. It would have still told a great story, right? Let's say that had happened for just a second, right? Let's say we never got any other movies, and we just had the one Star Wars movie. What would the Force be? The Force wouldn't necessarily be a biological thing. Vader wasn't Luke's father. Obi-Wan didn't lie to Luke. He just said, your father was killed, by this dark Jedi named Darth Vader. Yeah, Luke's father was a Jedi, but does it necessarily have to be biological? Because Obi-Wan just just tells him, you could learn the ways of the Force if you come with me to Alderaan, and so if you just look at that one single movie, I think anybody could have used it.
Absolutely.
But as we've built on the lore and we've expanded the world and everything, we've got explanations for things, and how things work now. That's great. I tend to think that anybody can use the Force. It's just like you said earlier, there has to be some talent behind it. Anybody could pick up a guitar and try to learn to play guitar, but if you don't have a natural knack for it, you're not going to be, Slash. You're not going to be
as good as Slash, exactly.
Right. So there's a bit of a talent there and a self-discipline,
as with everything. I understand exactly what
you and I were talking about Jedi Outcast, how you downloaded Jedi Outcast for the first time. You haven't got a chance to play it yet, man. And I've got Kyle Katarn's lightsaber right here. I love Kyle Katarn. Anyway, but there's a scene in that, and I know the game's not canon, I know it's not, but there's a scene in there where Kyle is talking to Luke about being, or where Luke's talking to Kyle about being a Jedi, and Kyle asks him, why can't you Jedi ever do things the simple way? And Luke says, well, if being a Jedi was easy, there'd be millions of us instead of dozens. And so being a Jedi is not an easy thing. And I know that's legends, I know, but it still stands true. Not everybody can be a Jedi. It takes a whole lifetime of practice and, repetition and training. And it takes, I mean, it took Obi-Wan until he was 25 to be knighted. And that was only because his master died, and so you have to have some kind of a knack for talent for it, I think. And a self-discipline. And I think Sabine has the self-discipline. It's just that what you brought up earlier, the once a rebel, always a rebel thing kind of overwrites the self-discipline a little bit more. And she just wants to run off and do her own thing. And, I think that's part of her downfall, honestly. I was wondering though, what's your thought? Because we were talking about this fight with her and Shin in the last episode. There's a moment where Shin knocks Sabine's lightsaber out of her hand, and Sabine goes, she falls back and she throws her hand up, and Shin jumps back, but there's no sound effect.
You don't see that exactly.
You don't see that she
actually succeeds.
Did she push a little bit of force out, just enough to make her? That's all you got? Like, you have no power, and so, or did she just not have anything at all? Is that what it was? What's your thought on that? I was kind of curious.
I don't think that. No. I completely get where you're coming from. I think that she didn't do anything exactly for the reason that you just said. That you don't necessarily. It's not noticeable. And this show in particular, in the way they're directing it, everything they do, they emphasize, which is great because it doesn't leave you a spot to. It doesn't leave anything to chance that you might miss it. The great thing about the show is that if you're not a fan, if you haven't seen Rebels, you can still sort of you can still watch it. Not a lot of people, maybe not even a lot of people watching us, speaking to us, would actually know that she, Sabine held the Darksaber at one point. Kanan Jarrus tried to teach her who is Ezra and how did they have this bond about potential. Sabine never, ever expressed, being jealous of anybody with the Force or anything like that. Right. And that's something else that's in her character, that she wants to be self-sufficient. She's not just a rebel, but she's someone who is a go-getter. She's like, this is what I have. I'm going to go do it. And she's very, she loves explosives, blowing shit up. She loves doing her own thing. She's got her own style. She embraces itself. She embraces her character. She embraces herself. No, I don't think that with all this backstory, with everything, and with thinking that the show directors would emphasize this, I don't think that she actually succeeded. Maybe Shin got pushed back, as in she was expecting the person she's
like a reflex,
right? Because she's like a reflex, I suppose, potentially. But we might find out. Maybe Shin might throw a comment to Baylan in the next episodes. I say plural episodes. Just throw a comment right there, like, no, she's got something, just not a lot. She might throw something along that way. Do you know what I mean? Or maybe even tell Shin, or maybe even Baylan might tell Shin. It might tell Sabine. You do have something, and I could teach you. You know that, right? Like, I'll bring it out of you in a way nobody else can, because that's the thing with people who use the dark side of the Force, because he'll get her to be ultra emotional, and when she gets ultra emotional, it could all come out. Yeah. And she could explode. She could really do it. She could really and then Ezra might come out and tell her, no, that's not how we do things. And here's why. And, you know what I mean? Like, that could be a whole other branch. That could be something else. Whole other rabbit hole we're going down there. And that's really exciting as well, potential. I mean, I know we don't have a lot to go on here. And we also don't have a lot of room to grow because there's only a few episodes. And then we're going into a movie, a singular movie, which is, we're not going to have too much. But I think that also, okay, I was going to say this at the end, but I think that also that we're going to get a ton of comics and maybe a novel or two in between the end of Ahsoka and that movie. Mm-hmm. And the end of the Filoni Mandoverse. Right. Yes. To fill in, not just fill in the gap, but give you a little bit more backstory, give you a little bit more, more here, a little bit more there. You know what I mean? Yeah. But anyway, sorry, keep going.
No,
This is
you're
very
absolutely.
interesting. This is very interesting.
Yeah, and so I wanted to talk about Ahsoka also because I mean the show is called Ahsoka. We need to talk about Ahsoka. And so you brought up something earlier I wanted to elaborate on a little bit too, and you were talking about what's her motivation, what's her arc in this, what's the point of her going on this, what's the motivation behind the story, right? What kind of character development are we going to get out of Ahsoka? And with Ahsoka, it's a character that everybody already loves. Everybody already knows her very well. We've seen her basically from a 14-year-old girl all the way up to now, between shows and novels and comics and, and everything else. So what I like about this is, I keep going back to this that last episode was so good. That moment where she taps into the dark side, right? Where she thinks Sabine has been killed. She taps into the dark side for a second, throws Shin, and Balin uses that as the distraction to really get in there on her. I love that Dave Filoni was willing to do that with his baby, with Ahsoka. Because even though we thought we knew Ahsoka would never do that. She always preaches against that. She knows better. When it comes down to it, she'll do it. Because look at who her master was, right? And so I really like that, even though we have a character that we already knew so well, we're still learning stuff about her. And as long as you're learning stuff about a character, tell all the stories you want to about them. That's great. So, somebody on the news net, because last night, we're recording this on Friday. Last night was Thursday night. We did the Newsnet live. I don't remember who it was, but somebody sent in a comment saying that there was I forget what we were talking about. Oh, we said something about why Ahsoka left Sabine, right? And why she left her in the woods to fight Shin, and she went to get the map and everything like that. And then when Shin comes back and she thinks Sabine's been killed, right? We were talking about how Ahsoka had told Sabine, maybe we need to destroy the map. If we're not the first ones to get to Ezra, nobody needs to, right? So at that point, Ahsoka was willing to sacrifice Ezra to keep Thrawn from coming back, right? And was trying to get that through to Sabine. And I think she fully believed that up until that moment she thought Sabine was dead. And when she thought Sabine was dead, that's when it was to talk about something, to talk about resisting the dark side is one thing, but when it comes down to it and the emotion is behind it, I think it's something completely different. And I think she learned that about herself also, which is why I think because she used the dark side right there, just for a quick second, she let her anger get her. I think that's why she got pulled into the world between worlds at the end of this 4th episode. And, who else would be there than Anakin Skywalker, right? Let's talk about Anakin a little bit. Or before we do, I want to hear your thoughts on Ahsoka and her development. I'm sorry, I didn't kick it back to you. What are your thoughts on Ahsoka?
No. On the contrary, you're bang on. I think it's exactly what I'm thinking as well. This is extremely interesting. Firstly, she seems a little bit more aloof in general, but that's clear since Mando as well, by the way. But that's clear, and it's clear why as well. Like the journey she's been on and everything she's been through. There's a lot there to unpack, and her training Sabine, and why she would have left her in her training, why she wouldn't have. Her conversations with Hu Yang are not just enlightening, but they're also telling towards her sort of her style, the way she thinks, what she does. Who better to have Hu Yang beside her than Ahsoka? Especially in this critical time. This is an amazing thing that we see, the amount of knowledge and the amount of Jedi. She'll be picking his brain to hell. You know what I mean? Like right into the real details, getting into every sort of concept about what kind of Jedi, why, and where. My assumption of this master was that he would have then said, "Oh, don't be so quick to judge Kit Fisto about this and about that. People think he's this, he's not, all that, and so on." He would have been that kind of insightful person to, absolutely to a T. And then to see her, I'm reading so much into what she's had in her locker, and then to see her sort of execute this stuff, it's so good because she's extremely passionate. I'm talking about Ahsoka, right? Not just Rosario Dawson, who I think is a great actress.
Right. Right.
regardless of anything. And I think that she portrays Ahsoka really well. She's growing on me. She's different to the Ahsoka voice that we wanted to hear as an actual voice. But I mean, she's really doing a great job of actually just being a slender representative of Ahsoka. Intensity when she needs to be vicious, when she needs to be calm and witty when she can be. And Ahsoka hasn't shown us her witty side yet. She's clearly very tense. This is a very, very heavy story we're getting into. She's not light-mooded at all. Everything's very, even that little bit with Hera, it felt like they were kicking it back sort of to when, she was jumping on hitchhiking on sort of a Rebels mission here or there.
Mm-hmm.
But no, she seemed quite intense, quite in herself. That bit when she went to that Imperial factory, the factory where they disassembled the droids, the ships to the hyperdrives and everything, repurposing them and all that. That was pretty cool, seeing her be a detective sort of thing, seeing her look up into this and imposing her authority, her and Hera. Then going up to fight with Baylan, that was a pretty cool fight. Can't believe she lost that fight. But yeah, I mean, the thing is that the whole point behind the losing is exactly as you said, that she loses control a little bit. And the World Between Worlds. So jumping back into the World Between Worlds, I'm not entirely sure how that happened in the first place. And I'd like to understand that. Like how that actually physically happened. Is there like a nexus there? Is there like a point here where is there something I'm missing? And at the same time, who else would be there other than Anakin? The thing is that okay, so wait, before we talk about Anakin, I mean, there's a lot of questions I have about Anakin, the stuff that you and Stephen Hall were talking about on Messenger. And Jay, everybody was talking about it. You and Stephen and Jay and JG and everyone and Nick. I just didn't understand really what to think of it because I was just hearing all these things going back and forth.
Right.
Anyway, but yes, tell me what you thought about that, and also about how did she access the World Between Worlds in the first place?
We'll talk about that first. How did she access it in Rebels Season 2 when she's fighting Vader? Somebody reached out and grabbed her and pulled her in. And so, I mean, because to Ezra's point of view, right, in Rebels, he's watching.
This time, nobody reached out. Yeah.
Do what? Do what?
I don't think anybody this time reached out to grab her.
Did Anakin though? We don't know what was going on with Anakin, and which we can get into here in a minute. But I
don't think so.
When she landed there, he was there.
Okay.
You know what I mean? And well, actually, he really wasn't though. Right off the bat, she was alone on that walkway. I don't know. Maybe somebody didn't pull her. I don't know. How she got into it, I'm not entirely sure.
And he says the first things he says to her is, "Fancy seeing you here," sort of thing.
I wasn't expecting to see you.
How are you here? Fancy seeing you here.
Yeah.
Sort of like he's not expecting it at all.
Right.
Exactly,
that's a good point.
Exactly.
So we can talk about the Anakin thing because I want to point something out that is just plainly obvious, and I'm probably an idiot for pointing it out, but that is not a Force ghost that is standing beside her in the World Between Worlds. That is not a Force ghost. That is a solid Anakin Skywalker. Is it the real Anakin Skywalker, or is it a manifestation of the Force? Is she about to get, Christmas storied and seeing, what her life would have been like had she stayed with the Order? Like, is that getting ready to happen? Or is this actually Anakin Skywalker pre-Revenge of the Sith? Which is an interesting concept to think about for a second. And I want to run with it for just a second. What if before episode 3, right? What if like pretty soon after Ahsoka left the Order, right? Anakin somehow stumbled upon the World Between Worlds. Yoda knew about it. We know Yoda knew about the World Between Worlds. Maybe some of the other Jedi did too. Maybe Anakin stumbled upon it and he figured out how to get into it. He's the chosen one, right? So why wouldn't he be able to get into the World Between Worlds or figure it out? What if he found this thing and he's just walking around and sees a portal where Ahsoka's getting her butt kicked by Baylan and sees her falls and reaches out or uses the Force to grab her and pulls her into the World Between Worlds to save her the same way Ezra did when Vader was getting ready to swipe at her and, in Rebels. I don't know, because this could go so many ways, right? So if this is the real Anakin, we're going to come to a point where Ahsoka cannot tell Anakin what's getting ready to happen to him in episode 3, because she told Ezra, you can't save your master and I can't save mine. So she knows she can't tell Anakin what's going to happen because it'll change everything. Right. So do we have to watch watch Anakin go back to the prequel era without telling him and come to terms with it? Or are we going to see an alternate timeline, maybe, where, like a Christmas Story, right? Where she's shown this is what would happen if, you were here, or you were, or if you died, or if you did this, right? What if we see like a version of it where she decided to stay with the Order and realized Anakin still fell to the dark side, even with her there. And so it kind of helps her release that guilt that we know she's carrying. What do you think?
I'm scared because I don't want to have my heart broken and see sort of Ahsoka thinking of a different. Yeah, I'm worried. I'm worried that if we do see Ahsoka sort of looking at the Force manifestation and looking at what could have been, what might have been, I'm worried that it will give her perspective. Mm-hmm. It's sort of like grounding her again. Be the person you're always meant to be. You have it in you. I understand the value of that. I think. I mean, we haven't seen everything yet. But this bit about actually, watching Anakin go back to face his. Oh my God, that's so intense. If that really is Anakin, if that really is the real Anakin, going back for some reason, and he's in between the end of Clone Wars and the start of Revenge of the Sith. Holy crap, that would be amazing. That would be amazing, amazing, amazing. And at the moment, that's what I'm running with, because at the moment, I do not think that would be a Force manifestation in the world between worlds. I just think that you can either access it or you don't. That's just because that's what we've seen. Obviously, we haven't seen enough of the world between worlds, but that's all we've seen up until now. And I don't think that that's something that they would grow into a lot. If it is something that they would really push into, and they would say, oh, but but there could be a Force manifestation, oh, but there could be something, that you could see and experiences and potential, not alternate realities, but more like what could have been, what might have been through the Force if you had changed your decisions. And ultimately, you shouldn't really think about changing decisions. You should think about your own path. Then that's definitely something that a Rey trilogy in the future would touch upon. That this would have to become some sort of center point or one of the focal points of conversation, because this then becomes too important to ignore, in my opinion. I might be wrong about this. Other people might think, this isn't this. Nah, Usef, it's all right. You're barking up the tree way too intensely over here. But I just think that this is really intense. I mean, I tried to explain the world between worlds to a buddy of mine who hasn't seen Rebels or Clone Wars or anything, who just watches the films, and he's and Mando and Ahsoka, sort of like the mainstream stuff. Mm-hmm. He's and I tried to explain it to him. I might have done a bad job of explaining it to him. He's like, yeah, so this is the core of the Force? I was like, well, no, not necessarily. It's just something that exists, and that, if you're strong with the Force, then you sort of access it because of this, and that's what we've seen about it up until now. Mm-hmm. He's like, okay, so how important is it? I was like, well, we haven't found out yet. But at the moment, it's important because this is extremely effing interesting. We're going to find out next week what this is, or who this is, and how it is. And these are thoughts going on. So this is what I'm this is why I'm scared, because I'm not sure what to anticipate just yet. So I can't, and also I'm watching Ahsoka. I cannot be emotionally guarded. I have to take this thing full on in the face. You know what I mean? Like, I just need to dive right into it. I
just go balls in,
take my time and just sort of emotionally guard myself and say, "Oh no, you can't say that." Like, no, I can't do that. I can't just try to numb myself while watching this. Anakin being Anakin, he was so Anakin. He looked so good. He looked even younger. So I think clearly people looked at the fan notes for like watching Obi-Wan Kenobi. People who said Hayden Christensen's age still showed when he was filming. Of course, it's impossible to get it all the way out. I mean, it's impossible to hold like a rubber eraser and like erase his wrinkles or his look in his eyes or anything. Come on, there's no way you're erasing that. And it's such a movie experience. It's such a thing now that you're taking this kind of actor in today's technology, and you're trying to And I say this kind of actor because he's so physical. He has such a cool presence, and he has this very specific features and expressions
Yeah.
in his facial features that you then say, send him back 20 years. This is such an event to be able to actually see this happen. I mean, it didn't happen with Harrison Ford. It didn't happen with any other character. But I don't even know of any other film that really, really successfully did this, or series, or show, or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But they're doing it now, and for that last few seconds when we saw Anakin, he looked amazing. He looked even better than he did in the Obi-Wan Kenobi show. Am I right?
Yeah, I think so. And the other thing I go to is I know that's not a Force ghost. He's got his lightsaber with him. He's wearing the dark robes. When Anakin became the Force ghost, and we just got
it was brown robes. Yep,
he had the brown robes, the brown and beige robes, and we just got Return of the Jedi from a certain point of view, the 40 short stories for Return of the Jedi. We just got it, and the story of Anakin becoming a Force ghost. Even he was surprised that his ghost had the light colored robes, and so I think I that's not a Force ghost, man. That's not. There's no way that's a Force ghost. And like you said, I don't think there's gonna be a Force manifestation there. And so I think that's Anakin. I don't know where he's from. I don't know what the story is, but are we going to get another story where, he was saying, I was on this planet or whatever. And, he fell into a portal and Obi-Wan's running around looking for him, has no idea. Anakin, where are you? Are we going to see that? So I don't know what's going on.
If that happens, we're totally getting an entire novel about just this bit.
Oh yeah. And it's got to be
about
if that's the case. If that's what it is, it has to be pretty quick after Ahsoka leaves the Order, because he says, I wasn't expecting to see you again so soon, and but she's older too than what he remembered seeing. So I don't know what the story is behind it, and I'm very intrigued. And the thing that really has me intrigued, and we can talk about this for a minute, is the fact that they're putting the next episode in 10 movie theaters across the U.S. And they're doing some movie theaters in London, too, if I remember right. What is getting ready to happen in this next episode? Obviously, Thrawn's going to be in the next episode. I think Thrawn's coming in the next one. And you know how you love villains? Thrawn is my baby.
Well, I'm gonna look at this seriously, because you almost exactly word for word called the ending of the previous episode. So I'm going to listen to what you say as if it's freaking spoilers right now.
So what he's talking about is on Newsnet Live last week. So a week ago last night, we were talking about this upcoming 4th episode. And I remember saying, and you guys can go back and watch this. I'm not making this up. This is from a week and 8 days ago. I posted on there. I was like, I'm going to be so mad if at the end of the next episode, Ahsoka gets her butt kicked by Baylan and she's kicking herself. She's down because she lost the fight, which that part's not true, but she did get her butt kicked by Baylan. And all of a sudden she hears behind her, "Hey, Snips," and it's Anakin. And then that's the end of the episode. And I called it down to the dialogue. I got it. And I remember when I was screaming. I screamed so loud at the end of that episode that my mother-in-law came out of the bedroom and was like, "Is everything good?" Like, she thought I was hurt. And she thought I was actually hurt. I had to walk outside and breathe. I was annoying my wife because I was
You were emotionally and mentally hurt.
Now I know what it means to be shook. I know what it means when people say I was shook. I get it now. And I called Marok just basically melting. He didn't melt, he exploded, but I kind of called that one, kind of like the Inquisitor from Tales of the Jedi. He seeped. Yeah, that's a good. He seeped. That's a good way to say it. I like that. But yeah, you guys can go back and check that out. I made that prediction, so you guys can bow down before your prophetic Star Wars god right now. I'm not Dave Filoni, but I think I'm starting to think like Dave Filoni, so I need to be paid like Dave Filoni. And so I think it's only fair that Lucasfilm hire me to be the fan that they bounce all these ideas off of. And I'll take 6 figures a year. I'll work from home. I don't care. That's fine. I just want to be a part of this. I'm starting to understand.
Hey, Lucasfilm, you can take me instead. I'll work for fucking free. I don't care. Like, it's fine.
But no, that's what Usef's talking about getting these predictions right. I still think so. One of the biggest predictions I have, and I've had it since before the show even came out, and it is, And now, and the thing is, if we end up getting a thing where Ahsoka is seeing her life, and if things had been different, if she had, stayed, if that's going to happen, then this is definitely going to happen. And I'm hoping I'm right. I still stand by my prediction that we're going to get a flashback scene of Anakin talking to Baylan at some point, because Baylan knew Anakin. He knew who Anakin was. He even says, everybody in the Order knew Anakin Skywalker. Few would live to see who he, what he became. So everybody knew Anakin. Baylan knew Anakin. So I want to see a flashback scene of Anakin during Clone Wars training a 14 or 15-year-old Ahsoka in live action. And, she's fighting or whatever and training. And Baylan walks in and is talking to Anakin. And maybe, he says something. Are you being a little too hard on her? And, Anakin's like, she can take it. She's tougher than she looks, or something like that, and speaks very highly of her the way he said, Anakin did. And because obviously Anakin talked to Baylan at some point about Ahsoka. So that, and I think we're going to see that. And I'm going as far as to call the detail that we're going to see Ahsoka fighting a young Ahsoka, and Ashley Eckstein is going to be the voice. I'm going that far, that that she is going to get some love in this series, that she's going to voice Ahsoka in this flashback. So far I've made 3 predictions. 2 of them have come true almost perfectly. So I'm hoping that if I get this one, Yahtzee. So do you think
I'm hoping that Ashley gets some love as well. Yeah, I'm absolutely hoping for that. There's also another way to get for the World Between Worlds to manifest another sort of another thought. Another potential line of events occurring, is that it could just show the both of them. It could just be something strange that they're locked in this place, or not locked, but just in this space together. This is a younger Anakin, and this is an older Ahsoka. And then all of a sudden they look beyond into the Force and be like, well, I wish you would have stayed around. I mean, I miss having you around. She's like, yeah, I wonder what that would have been like. What else would have happened? And then all of a sudden it shows her or something. Yeah. And then we can see that version of Ahsoka completely voiced by Ashley. Maybe even a little bit half animated, not necessarily like a jump in, not necessarily like in a sort of alternate reality jumping into this. Yeah. Let's watch this film right now. Just sort of like a general emotion, just riding out of there. So people are also, I'm going to ask you this actually, about the World Between Worlds. The Mortis arc that we saw in Clone Wars, is that going to have any bearing on the World Between Worlds in general?
I don't think so. Dave Filoni has gone on record in interviews talking about how he didn't want to answer every question about Mortis. He wanted to have some of the mystery left there. And he didn't want it to be understood. And so we had that little nod to it, on the mural, right? With the hands moving and everything like that.
Right. Absolutely.
We had that.
At the end of
Morai,
and then the mural shows
Morai,
at the start of the...
Yeah. Morai was there. That owl that follows Ahsoka everywhere. That's the daughter. Yeah. That's the daughter. So and we saw her in Mandalorian. You see her first before you even see Ahsoka in that episode of The Jedi. You see her in the tree and she kind of flies off. So she's there. I don't know if they're really going to touch on anything. You mean as far as lore? Is that what you're talking about? Because I don't think we're going to get...
No, as far as actual events in Ahsoka.
I don't think so. I don't think we're gonna go back to that. I think we've got 4 episodes left, and we still haven't seen Thrawn. We still haven't seen Ezra. We know that's probably going to be in the next episode. That's going to be in the next. But there's only 4 episodes left, and what do they have to cover still? You know what I mean? Like, I'm sure there's still quite a bit that has to happen. Thrawn coming back, and and them finding Thrawn and Ezra, and Thrawn's going to have a lot of screen time. If he's in the next
Darth
episode.
Maul hasn't come back yet, so we're making some progress. There's some mystery.
That's right. And he can come back with dope and deadly everything, then, not just legs.
Sorry.
So, dope and deadly everything. But no, I don't think we're going to see any more of this stuff. I think that was... They never talked about it again in Clone Wars after that episode.
No, they never talked about it again. Nobody ever talked about it again.
Nobody ever
brought
did.
Up again. Ever.
And
no novels.
We had the nods.
Was it brought up in any comic books? Because I have only read a very limited number of comics.
Not that I can. Not that
then
I can
probably no. Then probably not. They're probably just as Filoni just said. He's like, no, it's fine.
There might be a mention, because maybe if Anakin's there, maybe Anakin stumbled upon it. He doesn't know what it is. Maybe he doesn't know
Right.
what the world between worlds is. And, and because Ahsoka knows what it is because Morai basically told her when she got pulled in from Rebels, right? Because Morai was there and Morai basically explained what it was. So if Anakin doesn't know what it is, if that actually is Anakin, Ahsoka has to explain to him, this is, the world between worlds. This is like a world between worlds. There it is, and there's the name, because I don't think it actually has the name A World Between Worlds. That's just what everybody kind of calls it. But I think she explains to him, this is basically a nexus point where all points meet. This is outside of time and space. This isn't time travel. It's outside of time and space. It's a place that doesn't exist really physically, yet here we are. And Andy's probably be like, how do you know that? Well, Morai. What's Morai? Oh, this owl, Oh, you remember the daughter?
It's in the metaverse. Zuckerberg already talked about it.
It's their avatars that are talking. So no, I don't think we're gonna get any more to stuff. I think I could be dead wrong though. It's Dave Filoni, because at this point I've learned to say never with Dave Filoni. I don't say never anymore. And I was saying that at the end of Mando, or Book of Boba Fett, when we got the Ahsoka Luke episode with Grogu, and R2 was there, I said after that episode, I said, never say never. You never say never with Dave Filoni. And now that we're doing a show with his baby, coming back to his callbacks, callbacks to his callbacks, I'm not going to say it ain't going to happen. I don't think it's going to, but I'm not going to say it won't.
Gotcha. Yeah. I understand completely where you're coming from. And I'm worried that I'll get my head boggled too much by the end of this series, because I really want it to. Okay, so I'm sure that the end of this series is a cliffhanger. There's just no way that there's going to be a happy ending. There's no for all intents and purposes, the ending of Mandalorian was kind of a happy ending. I don't like to use that term because it's too cliche, and Mando ending was slightly in that direction, but it was just
right.
Yeah. Anyway, but so for Ahsoka, we know that it shouldn't be, I think. I'm just really liking this show so far. That's really and I know that no matter what, no ending is going to satisfy me, because I just want to keep going. And this is a great set of content, great writing, great show, great characters. I'm loving it. Absolutely loving it. And if anybody listening to us has any qualms about anything in the show, we'd really actually like to hear it, because it's one thing to I know we're only talking positives right now. We're not talking negatives at all. So I actually want to hopefully hear some more negatives to maybe ground us out in the conversation.
Oh yeah. And also keep in mind too, 98% of the footage we saw in the trailers has been seen. So the next episodes,
that's a good point. That's a really good point.
We have no idea. I think there's like
no man's land.
There's 2 shots of Thrawn, and I think there's a shot of Ezra and a shot of the fleet coming out of hyperspace. Other than that, no idea. I have no idea what's gonna happen. And so I'm excited. Tuesday can't get here soon enough. I really want to try to pull some strings with Newsnet and try to get a screener of that episode. I want to try so bad and get to watch it before anybody else, just so I can dangle it in front of everybody. But I don't think it's gonna happen. But I can't wait, dude. I'm so excited for this. I'm so excited for the next 4 episodes that I wish I could find the world between worlds and just go to Tuesday. This Tuesday. Oh, go back and go to the next Tuesday. And just I want to so bad, but the anticipation is some of the best part of it. It sucks, when you're waiting and you're being impatient, but the anticipation is one of the best parts of it. So really excited about this series. And I can't wait to see where it goes. Anything else you want to talk about on Ahsoka before we move on to the villain bracket?
No, not really, because honestly, it's there's so much we can say that it's almost healthier not to say a lot more.
Fair enough.
No, I'm really, really excited for it. Yeah.
Cool. Well, we will move on to the villain bracket. We had a mailbag question, but I think I'm going to sit on it for right now, because we've already gone quite a while on this episode. So we'll do the villain bracket real quick, get that set up for everybody, and then I think we're going to sign off for the night. But if you guys would like to get a mailbag question on the show, especially next week, talking Ahsoka, anything like that, because we're going to talk full spoilers. If the show comes out on Tuesdays and we're recording on Fridays, it's full spoilers. You've had your chance to watch it. We're talking about it. So if you guys have any questions for Ahsoka, shoot them our way. anything like that, how do you guys get a question on? You email it to us at starwarscanonpodcast@gmail.com, or you can message us on Facebook at facebook.com/starwarscanonpodcast, and we'll go through each week, pick out a few questions, and we will answer them here on the air if we can answer them. I'm pretty far behind on my book reading right now. I'm still in High Republic's phase 2 right now, so I'm pretty far behind. I'm trying to get caught back up, and it's not easy. I got stuck on a book that took me like 5 months to read. I wasn't a huge fan of it, so it took me out of it for a little while. But let's do this villain bracket. So, Usef, would you like to explain the villain bracket? This is your baby. I'll let you take the reins on her.
I appreciate that. Thank you, Brian. So, I'm a huge fan, as we've mentioned, and if anybody's listened to any of the episodes previously of this podcast, which I have been on, then I'm always ranting about villains. Why is that? Because there's a lot behind it. Not only is my favorite thing in Star Wars, of course, the Force, but also the villains. But in any really genre, in any fantasy, in any fiction that I read, or nonfiction that I read, the true villain is really rare. That I find a villain that is actually attractive to us. So obviously, when we were younger, we'd just watch regular action movies. Whether it was Mortal Kombat or Street Fighter, whether it was any other sort of comic book or whatever. The villain is very stereotypical sometimes, right? It's very stereotypical sometimes. So sometimes you know exactly what's going to happen, what kind of villain he is. The more special, the more unique the villain is, the more I fall in love with the show. And in fact, it gives me, or with the genre, or with the topic. And in fact, it gives me a more reason to enjoy the hero. The older we get and the more into Star Wars we get, we can actually see that, well, sometimes heroes, not only do they make mistakes, but they could also fall to become like someone who hurts and becomes a villain. I love dissecting this. I love looking at it. And so here, I'm just trying to do something, as in Star Wars, there's a certain number of heroes that we keep following, but there's an amazing number of villains that are out there. And so what I thought would be interesting is just to take a look at all these villains that we've experienced and think of who is the coolest. Not necessarily who would win in a fight, not necessarily not even necessarily who you would want to be. Just the coolest period. You can translate that in any way. You could say the coolest, the guy, he can knock anybody else down. I don't see how this villain should have been defeated in the first place. You could say he's cool because I want to be like him. You could say he's cool just because he's so suave, he's so awesome, he's so cool. I would, so many. For me, my favorite type of villain is the villain that you can relate to. But anyway, so far we've had a lot of villains, and we still have a few more coming up. So we've divided them into categories, as Richard J had told me I should do, which he's completely spot on to. And then we're sort of ranking them, putting them up against each other. And then once we have that down, and we have sort of winners and losers in each category, we'll take it a step further. And you can tell us actually what you think we should do with the villain bracket. If you think we've missed the villain, let us know. If you think that some of these villains are whack, or you don't like what's going on, absolutely. Give us your own bracket. Tell us what you think we should be doing. Mm-hmm. I don't like the concept of ranking because some things should not be better than most. You can experience anything that you want in any which way that you like. But this is the amazing bit about Star Wars, that we're actually doing this so that we can hear each other's opinions. And the more we look into these villains, the more we look into these characters, the more about Star Wars that we can talk and dissect and everything. So it was a very, very ultra long explanation, but I hope that it made sense to you. And I hope that you guys like villains and like Star Wars as much as I do.
So we've been doing this for a while, and we've already gone through several categories. And when Usef and I tried to record this episode a couple of, 3 or 4 weeks ago, we randomly chose 2 characters to go up against each other. Normally we do it on the air. We do it during the episode, so you guys know we're not just putting these up against each other. But because of the technical difficulties and whatnot, we figured that was a really good matchup, so we'll just go ahead and keep it. So the matchup that we had last week is General Hux and Count Vidian. These are 2 really... Hux, I think everybody knows it, but Vidian is a little he can be a little foggy to a lot of people. Not everybody has read A New Dawn, which is the novel he was introduced in. Usef, I don't think, you haven't read A New Dawn yet, have you?
No, so because of the villain bracket, I've read excerpts of A New Dawn explaining Vidian a little bit. And
Gotcha.
I really like Hux a lot, actually, as a villain. But yeah, so even, you say foggy, he is absolutely foggy. Unless you've read the novel, you won't really know him. He doesn't show up unless in the novel, and a couple of canon comic books as well.
Right. Yep, that's right. So Count Vidian was introduced in the novel A New Dawn, which was the very first canon novel released in 2014 by John Jackson Miller. It was also, it's funny enough, we were talking about Rebels so much this episode. It's also the novel where Kanan and Hera met for the first time. And we get a little bit of backstory on Kanan, a little bit on Hera. We see them kind of get together, and that's really it as far as the Rebels crew goes. But the villain in the story is a man named Count Vidian, who's a businessman. He's kind of a, what's the word I'm looking for? He's not a motivational speaker. That's just kind of, that's kind of a bad way to describe him. He's a businessman who cares only about efficiency. He doesn't care what it takes to meet your quota. You're going to meet your quota, even if it means costing you life or limb. It doesn't matter. And, efficiency is the most important thing over, life, anything. So he's an imperial businessman who has taken his biological imperfections out and has replaced them with cybernetics. So his eyes are cybernetic. A lot of him is cybernetic so that he can see these imperfections. These droid eyes, these cybernetic eyes can, analyze metals and and all this stuff. He's got like built-in transmitters so he can communicate with his ship without even saying a word. With his head, he's got a vocabulator on him. He basically sounds like a droid. It's just his ears can pick up these different wavelengths of sound and all this stuff. You can see infrared, you can see all this stuff. So he's really a cool villain, but he's brutal. He's incredibly brutal. And that's shown in the novel. He's willing, he grabs people's throats, smashes their faces, and just kills them brutally because they're not being efficient to help the Empire meet these mining quotas. So I really like Count Vidian as a villain. I think he's really cool. If you'd like to go read more about him, you can do what Usef did. If you don't have time to read the novel, go hit Wikipedia. I'm sure there's a whole page on Count Vidian. Some excerpts from the novel. He's really cool. I think everybody knows General Hux, which I think he is more underrated than I think he's an underrated character. I don't think he's very underrated, but I think he is underrated. The fact that he was willing to help them in Rise of Skywalker, he's like, I don't want to see you. I don't care if you win. I just want to see Kylo Ren lose, right? So it's kind of a different side of a villain we've seen before. Kind of the enemy of my enemy is my friend kind of thing. And so I really like them both. I think it's a cool matchup. So go vote, guys. You can vote on our YouTube channel, on our community page, or you can go to our Facebook page, and there'll be a spot there where you can vote also. If you're listening in on Spotify, you can scroll on down a little bit on your mobile device, and the poll will be right there on the Spotify play page for this episode also, so you guys can vote there. Next week, we'll let you know who won, and we'll give you guys the next two. And also, I forgot to say, the last bracket we had was, what was it, Phasma and Gideon? Yep. Captain Phasma and Vidian? Or, I'm sorry, Captain Phasma and Gideon. Gideon won by, like, landslide. Like, Gideon won a lot. So, and remember, you're not voting on who's going to win in a fight. You're voting on who you think is the cooler villain. So go vote. You guys can vote multiple times if you want. Visit all of our social media. You guys can vote there. It'll even be on Twitter, X, whatever it's called now. Twitter. I think we're still calling it Twitter, aren't we? We'll have the poll up on Twitter also. You guys can go there and vote also. So that's the villain bracket, and I'm pretty excited to get that going again. We still have a long ways to go. We're not even to the fun topics yet. They're fun. They're all fun. But we're not even like to the really fun categories yet. You know what I mean? The miscellaneous Force users, the Sith, like that's when it's really going to kick off and get cool. So what do you think about this matchup, Usef? And do you have anything else you want to add before we decide to sign off for the evening?
No, I really like this matchup. I really like it. And so actually, every villain has his own, backstory. The most important backstory I'm interested in is how it relates or how it resonates with me. And I think that I have seen a few of these villains in my life in one way or another. somebody who's like the most menial of bosses ever in history, and then somebody else who's such an amazing orator that you just hate him, and then another guy who's just such a sleazy sort of like kick you in the whatever gonads type of person. Yeah, no, there's a lot of these kinds of people in your lives anyway, and that's where most of these writers pick up on these villains, isn't it? That's where they get inspiration.
Yeah.
So no, that's just something else that it's just something to think about. But yeah, no, Star Wars is something, we could talk about Star Wars for hours, and probably next time I'll talk a little bit about something else that I really love about Star Wars, which I just remember that we spoke about last episode that we almost got on the air. But no, we have a lot of time to talk about everything that we love. So I think that's it.
Fair
Mr.
enough.
Miller. Fair
enough. Well, great episode. I'm really glad you're able to join me tonight. And thank you for joining me, even with all the technical difficulties we've had. You have to, like I told Usef before we got going, because we had a couple
with
false
the lag,
starts.
yes, a little bit, but it's fine.
We had a couple false start before we got going tonight, but like I told him, you have to expect some of it when you're halfway around the world and you're doing podcasts together. You have to expect some of it, and so it's something you just got to deal with, and when it comes time to deal with it and make the best of it. And I think we did that on this episode. I had a lot of fun talking with you.
One of these days we'll record it in the same room together.
That would be awesome. I'm hoping, because for those of you that don't know, I don't think there's anybody that doesn't know at this point. Usef lives in Cairo, Egypt, and I'm a huge fanatic when it comes to ancient Egyptian mythology and stuff like that. I love it. Assassin's Creed Origins, I 100%ed it and platinumed it in like 2 weeks. I couldn't stop. So I love everything about Egyptian culture and about that, the history there. And so Kirsty and I are trying to plan a trip to go to Cairo and meet up with Usef. We'll bring a couple bottles of Peach Crown, man, because I know you don't have Crown over there. So we're gonna bring a couple bottles of Peach Crown over. We're gonna have a great old time, talk Star Wars, and get a tour of Cairo, man. That'd be awesome. And Usef as our guide. So we're hoping here in the next several years we'll be able to get like that put together when Jay's old enough to kind of go with us and appreciate it, and everything, and sit on a plane that long without being a pain in the butt. So we're definitely going to be doing somewhere down the line. We'll get a live episode out where it's both of us sitting in the same room together. And it's going to be a lot of fun. So thank you guys for joining us this week. Make sure to tune in next week, and we'll be talking about whatever's going to happen in this next big episode of AHSOKA. It's kind of a mystery at this point. So I'm sure it'll be podcast worthy. So I'm sure that's what we'll be talking about all next episode. And like I said earlier, if you guys would like to get a question on the podcast for our mailbag segment, just simply email it to us at starwarscanonpodcast@gmail.com or send it to us on Facebook at facebook.com/starwarscanonpodcast. So without further ado, I will let you guys get back to whatever you're doing this evening before you decided to tune in for our ugly mug sitting here talking about Star Wars. And hope you guys have a great night. See you guys next week. May the Force be with you. You've just been listening to the latest episode of the Star Wars Canon Podcast. I'm Brian Miller, joined by my co-host Usef Waly. You can stream new episodes of the podcast every Saturday night at 7 o'clock p.m. Central Standard Time on Anchor.fm, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and more. If you'd like to support the show, you can do so at patreon.com/1138productions. Be sure to like and subscribe on whichever platform you're listening in on. If you'd like to get a question on the show, you can send it in to us at starwarscanonpodcast@gmail.com. Until next week, keep it civil, and may the Force be with you.